Here we go. This is a Mark Williams 40 spline spool, and as you know, they got the carrier bearings on it. I bought this as a complete unit. I've been setting up for a little while. I'm going to buff all this out, but of course I got my shop press over here. But on the carrier bearings, you can't get this spool, the spool bearings, in the shop press. So you got to make something to make it work. Now there are several different tools you can buy, and they are very nice tools, and they run about $340, $350 before shipping, and that's all fine and good if you're in the business. But I'm kind of just a hobby shop guy, and what I'm going to show you is, I already pulled one of the bearings off. I'm going to show you what I put together, give you an idea of how to get these bearings off. Okay, the first thing I did was I went and purchased this. This is a Harbor Freight bearing, the large size bearing separator. And you get these separate, you can buy them separately from Harbor Freight. I think it was about 10 or 15 bucks, something like that. And these separator plates, you know, they're pretty thick. It's made in China. But for what I'm doing, I think it'll be fine. They come with a couple of threaded holes. The threaded holes that are in them are metric. Hold on. Yeah, excuse me. They're metric. And of course, this stuff from China, it's questionable to begin with. But you know, if I was in the business, I'd probably get something. If I did this for a living, I'd get something a little more substantial. But this works fine. I drilled these holes that are threaded out to an American size, which is 5/8, and then I went down to the bolt store and I got these grade 8 bolts, and these are 6.5 inches long, and they worked out just perfectly for what I'm doing here. And I've got this little puck. These are pieces of solid steel. I've got several of them. Different little things for pressing on and off deals. But this is I believe 1 7/8. And this happened to be the perfect size for, I machined a little shoulder in it to center in the 40 spline spool. And as you can see, it's just slightly undersized. It rests on the lip of the spool, and the little shoulder just centers it, so when you're pressing down, removing the bearing, this thing can't walk off to the side on you. You know, sometimes stuff gets under pressure if you don't have it perfectly square. So it kind of centers it right there, and it's a flat. I machined both sides. It's a nice flat right there, and so anyway, this is slightly undersized, and for a 40 spine large bearing spool, 1 7/8 is the solid size, and it's probably about maybe 1 3/4 or so in height. Okay, the bearing separator, this thing, and then I made this piece right here. This is a 1/2 inch thick piece of cold rolled steel, and it's the perfect size to fit over the length of this bearing separator. And what it does is, I mic these from the center. I mic these 2 holes out, and I had to transfer the holes into this piece of steel. And these are slightly bigger than 5/8. Forget what it was exactly, but it's just slightly bigger so that you're not fighting these bolts when you put this thing all together. And so what I'm going to show you is how I use this thing to press off this spool bearing. Okay, I'm going to try to set this phone down and let you see. Try to get it over here where you can see what I'm doing. If I can get this thing to stand up. Stand up. There we go. You can tell this is a backyard garage video. Okay, I hope you can see this. So now what we got is we got the bearing separator plate. Okay, got the 2 bolts. You slip this over the bearing, kind of get it put together, and then you tighten these nuts to hold it under the shoulder of the bearing. You're trying to get underneath the shoulder of this bearing for pulling the bearing off. And you get these locked down in here, and just tighten it up evenly so you get this thing just like it's supposed to be. Now what we've got is the bearing separator plate on the bottom of the lip of the bearing, not on the rollers, but on the inside race of the bearing support. Okay, you got this tight where it sits right there. Just kind of snug it up. Okay, then we got this thing right here. Oh, let me tell you about this center nut, this center deal here. This is a hardened concrete anchor, and it's also 5/8 in size. And I use this because it's hardened, and I like the idea of this little shoulder on the bottom right here. Of course, if you put this in concrete, you know, you crank down on it, it's an expanding anchor and holds it, but the whole thing is hardened. And so I got a nut that fit it. It's coarse thread, and I fused, welded the nut to the top of it to give me something to crank on when I'm taking the bearing off. So this is a concrete anchor, dead center in the middle of this plate, so that it pushes down squarely on this bearing. Now what you do is you take your puck, put it up here and kind of get it centered. Then this thing will rest right on there for just a few minutes while you put these bolts back in. You slide these bolts down. I got a shoulder nut. So 5/8 coarse, hardened, case hardened shoulder nut, because everything needs to be as secure as you can possibly get it. I want nothing flexing or coming apart on me. You just kind of run this up till the nut, the bolt, just is flush with the bottom. And then you put the other side in. This sandwiches the plate together. The reason these holes are slightly bigger, I told you about, was so you can get this thing lined up without fighting it. Just put the nut on the bottom till you feel that it's protruding slightly through. Get this cranked back. Everything looks like it's good. This one's on there. This one's on there. The bolt is right in the center. It's going to be pushing right on top. Just kind of hand turn this thing till you get a little tension pulling up on it. Okay, this is tight. That's tight. Everything's tight. I'm going to snug these down just a little bit. Even though hand tight probably will do it. You don't want that coming off of the you don't want that slipping off of the bearing. Okay, now we got all of that. This separator plate is up on the bottom. This is all sandwiched tight together, and what we're going to do is we're going to crank down on this bolt, pushing down. This will pop that bearing off, and then the whole thing should come off no problem. Let's see what happens. Just go very slowly. Get it tightened up, make sure that nothing's in a bind, and let's see. There, did you hear it pop? Just pop, it's coming up. Okay, there she is. Bearing's off. Right here, got the bearing. This is all stayed together, did what it was supposed to do. And so I made this handy little tool. Probably got about, with the bolts, I had to buy a couple of drill bits, but you know, the tool by itself, the piece of steel, the bearing separator, all the bolts, everything you need, probably 40 bucks at the most. You know, 20, maybe 20, 40, the bolts, this anchor. There's probably about $40–45 total in this tool that does exactly what we're supposed to be doing. Okay, and so that's what I made to take these spool bearings off. And of course, what you do is these old bearings, you know, cut this roller race off, and you can use the inside race to use as a tool when you go over to your shop press to press the new bearings on. This is a hardened, case hardened. What you do is, I got a little piece of steel like this right here, and once the new bearing is squared up on there, you put this old race on top of the new bearing with this flat piece of steel. This is another 1/2 inch piece of steel that goes on there. You use your shop press to slowly press the new bearing back on, using the inner race as a tool to press squarely. So anyway, that's what I put together to press the bearings off of a 40 spline spool. It works on any size spool. The puck that you use might have to be a different size because this surface right here might be a little different. But anyway, hope you enjoyed that. Thanks a lot.